I guarantee you, if you change your mind about interviews and you think of them like this opportunity to be seen because someone else already sees you, you'll never approach an interview the same way again. Welcome to the Love Your Work Life podcast, where you will get encouragement, strategies, all the things you need to love your work life. This is about transformational, strength-based coaching for career, for leadership, for life. I'm your host, Elissa Shuck. Let's get started. We're in this season of breaking out. I hope that you feel like there's a current that you can jump into with regards to your career. And maybe you promised yourself at the beginning of 2024 that this was your year. And maybe that's your motivation for being here because you want to keep your promise to yourself in 2025. And this is your time, my friend, understanding your personal dynamics, the natural behavioral strengths you have, what makes you tick as a person, and the way those traits and characteristics underpin your success and happiness at work. It starts there. And then we have your connection points of how all of those align to jobs and opportunities, and then how you share some of that story on your resume and on your LinkedIn profile. I am telling you that the techniques I'm going to teach you today, and this is part strategy, it's part self-concept, but what I'm going to teach you today is an absolute game changer when it comes to interviews. Because here's the deal, most people aren't doing it this way. They could, but they aren't. And that's what's going to set you apart when they're evaluating you as a candidate. It's because of how connected you are to yourself, of how connected you are to the role, and how you are able to tell your story in a compelling way. When you start living in the moment of having it, of going in thinking, this is my role, not in an arrogant way, but just in a way that generates a sense of ease and certainty. And I've got a good analogy that'll help you get to this place. But when you have that ease and certainty, other people feel it. Other people feel ease and certainty about you as well. And that's when they can start picturing you in the role. So here's a way for you to kind of get into this. I'm a I'm a big believer that we have lots and lots of evidence. We have lots and lots of things that have happened in our lives that we can sort of plug and play is one of the phrases I use. We can take it and we can plug it into a new context. We can hack our brain. We can say, hey, I felt powerful, I felt empowered, I felt confident when I was doing this. You can take that and you can plug it into the current moment. And the way you do that is that you remember what you were thinking back in that other time. And because you were thinking something, you were feeling something as well. That's what brought out this sense of curiosity or ease or certainty or confidence. It didn't come from nowhere. It comes from you and what you're thinking about yourself. So imagine this. You are in your office, if you're on site, if you're remote, could happen this way. But imagine a scenario where someone calls you up, someone sees you walking by a conference room, and they suddenly reach out to you and say, oh, hey, we're having a meeting here. Would you mind popping in for a few minutes? I saw you walk by, or it occurred to me that you might be able to answer some questions for us. Would you mind just coming in for a few minutes and sitting down and just engaging in the conversation? Well, what would you do? You would be, oh, sure, yeah. Oh, I would love to do that. Almost everybody I've ever brought this story up to. This is something I consistently use in my client coaching sessions. What would you be thinking and feeling in that moment? Well, you'd probably be curious. You'd probably feel a little flattered, like, wow, they think I have something to offer. They think I can contribute to the conversation. You would feel maybe a little bit confident. Maybe you'd feel a little nervous. That's okay. That just kind of comes with the cherry because that's a little bit of anticipation, right? It's not nervous out of fear, it's nerves out of anticipation. Here's the truth of it. You weren't originally invited into that meeting, so you don't even know who's in the room. You also don't even really know the agenda of the meeting or what questions they're going to ask, but you go in gladly with curiosity, ease, certainty. Guess what, my friends? This is exactly what is happening when you're invited to an interview. Someone saw something in you. Someone thought, hey, they could contribute. I see some things here that could be helpful and useful and make sense with what we're trying to accomplish. That is what's happening in an interview. Yet our brains want to tell us that things are wildly different. Oh my gosh, I have to go in there and prove myself. When you're invited into an impromptu meeting, you're not going in to prove yourself. They already have some ideas about you that you actually have something to offer. Well, that's happening in an interview as well. So I want you to adopt this concept of interviews that you're there because they see something. You're there because they have ideas about you, and now it's your opportunity to showcase that their ideas about you are right on point, that you're the exact right person to help them in that moment. That is an interview. I guarantee you, if you change your mind about interviews and you think of them like this opportunity to be seen because someone else already sees you, you'll never approach an interview the same way again. I love interview coaching. I love interview preparation with my clients. And part of it is because interviews have never, ever freaked me out. I've never felt intimidated based on who I was interviewing with. I could be interviewing with a CEO, not intimidating to me. And that's because I feel like, hey, I was invited for a reason. Now, I may go in with some curiosity. That's healthy. That's good. I don't know who this person is. Oh, I'm curious about their history. I'm curious about what they want. But it's that self concept that, I was invited for a reason that has always underpinned my approach to interviews. And that's what I want you to grab a hold of today and never, ever forget it. You were invited. That means something. That's evidence that you're meant to be in the room. One of the biggest mistakes that I see clients making in your interview is that you don't really know how to talk about yourself. And that's because nobody really teaches us how to do that. Some of us maybe had encouragement from teachers or other people in our life that encouraged us, that told us we were good communicators. But the reality is nobody really teaches us the nuances of how to talk about ourselves in the context of our accomplishments, our history, the results that we create, because we're just there doing our job, right? We just think, well, this is just what's required of me, so this is what I do. But every single little thing you're doing on the job is a result you are creating. I want you to own that as well. I want you to own the fact that everything you do is a result you are creating. It's on its way to an accomplishment. An accomplishment doesn't just happen. There's lots of little steps, lots of little pieces of the process that get you there. So think about that. And I want to talk to you about how to talk about yourself, because as you start to think about how everything you're doing is creating a result, then you want to be sure that you know how to share that, how to articulate that, and talk about yourself in that context during your interviews. So, what are the things that can go sideways? Well, first of all, things can go sideways if you are not taking proper focus on who you're speaking to and the mindset that you have when you're speaking to them. So, you know, when your interviews are going a little sideways, if you talk too much, if you don't listen for cues, sometimes you or people will find themselves oversharing. Like you go off on a tangent of irrelevant details, or you find yourself sharing hurts and betrayals from your other job. If you're talking about yourself in this way, the end result is that you never truly connect with the interviewer. Um, you might even come off as a little disinterested, right? If you're talking too much and you're not allowing there to be a natural flow between you and the interviewer, then they might think that you're even disinterested. Sometimes if you talk too much, you can come off as overqualified. I know that doesn't seem logical, but it actually happens because your oversharing can sometimes feel a little like a steamroller, or your oversharing of things that you've done, accomplishments you've had that aren't relevant to the role, will help them think, I just don't know how this fits. It doesn't make sense. And it seems weird that they wouldn't want to hire an overqualified person, but let's be real. Most people are not secure enough in themselves to hire someone that's overqualified. It seems ridiculous. I used to love to hire people who were well to overqualified because I knew if they contributed at the level they were capable of on my team, they were going to make me look good as a leader. But not everybody has that sensibility. So you want to pay attention to what's happening between you and them. You're not pushing yourself down, you're not saying things that aren't true. You're not diminishing yourself, but you're being sensitive to them and what they need, and you're communicating accordingly. So don't talk too much. Yes, it's it's about you, but it's for them. And when you make it all about you and not enough about them, then these are some clues of what could be going sideways in that conversation. Now, what if you are someone who doesn't say enough about yourself? You just have difficulty articulating what you've done and the accomplishments you've made. Sometimes, if you are dealing with imposter syndrome, then you're also not able to say enough about yourself during your interviews. Now, here are some symptoms of how that might show up. You over rely on your past. Isn't this interesting? If you haven't connected the dots, right? If you haven't made those connections through a deeper understanding of your strengths and how those strengths align to a role and how those strengths project into your future, and you're over relying on your past, then you're probably not saying enough about yourself. You're probably not doing a good job of aligning yourself to the role that you're applying for. Sometimes this shows up as you behaving like you're subordinate in the interview conversation, like they're in charge, I'm not. You're downplaying yourself either verbally or in your body language. You are not a subordinate in that conversation. Sometimes you talk about what you did instead of who you are. That's another symptom about not saying enough about yourself in an interview. That's why we foundation everything with a deeper self-awareness of your strengths, the qualities, the characteristics and traits you have that underpin your success. So when you're able to integrate what you did with who you are, it's a game changer. So if someone asks you a behavioral interview question, like how do you handle it when someone is a difficult person to work with, then, and you know, one of your traits is the ability to create harmonious environments, then you might say something like, well, one of the things about me is that I'm naturally good at creating harmony between team members. So even if someone has a little bit of a difficult personality, or someone is stressed out about a budget constraint or a new priority, I just have a way of listening, of creating empathy between us, and through that, really creating an opportunity for a harmony that keeps us from going off track. Like I'm totally making this up off the top of my head as we're talking, but I think you see where I'm going with this. That when you are self aware, you could have answered the question. Let's backtrack a little bit. You could have answered the question, well, I schedule a meeting, we have a sit down, I ask some questions, I hear what they have to say, and then I offer some recommendations. That's very different than saying, I'm naturally good at creating a sense of harmony and cooperation between people. So I schedule a meeting, I hear what they have to say, and then we collaborate at how to make it better and a mutually helpful for both of us. You see the difference in those responses. They can picture you as someone who is empathetic and creates a environment of harmony. They see how that is contributing to the organization. Anybody can schedule a meeting, but we need them to visualize you, who you are, and how you show up. That is the power. Now, if you don't say enough about yourself, the end result is still going to be that you never truly connect with the interviewer. And there's a good chance that you will come off as underqualified. If you're not going to own your accomplishments, if you aren't comfortable enough in your own skin to talk about yourself in a powerful way and with ease and certainty and confidence and ownership, then they might miss out on something. And you're perfectly qualified for the job, but they haven't connected those dots. And the only thing they can come up with to justify not moving forward in their own mind is that you're underqualified. We would want interviewers to connect the dots. And yes, they will. But my friends, in an interview, it's your job to ensure that you're leaving the breadcrumbs, that you're doing what I call guiding the narrative going on in their head. You cannot control everything they're thinking, but you can guide, you can move this way and that way to ensure that everything is working out the way you want it, that they're seeing you for the the person that you are. So, what do you do? How do you talk about yourself in a way that's engaging, that feels natural? It doesn't feel, robotic or overly prepared, because you want to share all the value that you bring to the table. So there's a couple of ways that I like to offer that you think about this. And the first one is thinking of yourself like a consultant. Remember the analogy I brought up earlier. You've been invited. They have a problem. They have goals. They think you have the perfect combination of skills, strengths, and experience to help address those things. And what do consultants do? Consultants go in as an expert. They go in knowing that they have the answers. Now they go in curious, right? Because they're not quite sure what the problems are. But they know that they can solve the problems. They know that no matter what comes up, they'll be able to figure it out. And they know that they're thinking, I'm the perfect person to help. I want you to put on that consultant hat when you go into an interview. When you think of yourself as the consultant, then you're going in with that same curiosity, with that same problem solving, with that same sort of scanning the environment, scanning the situation, and figuring out how you can add value. It's such a great way to do it. It really takes the pressure off because you know what? Consultants do not have to prove themselves. They have a history of success, just like you do. You have a whole resume that explains some of those successes that they read and that they used as an evaluation tool that helped them decide to bring you into the conversation in the first place. So you want to just settle into that feeling that they invited me for a reason, that I have the expertise to solve their problems. The consultant hat is such a powerful, powerful place to be. So when you go in thinking, I am the solution to their problems, their challenges, I can help achieve goals, you are elevating your self concept. You're seeing yourself in a different light. Again, not subordinate, not subservient, not trying to prove yourself or convince anyone of anything. You're just there to offer what you bring to the table. That's exactly what a consultant does. How do you be sure that you are the consultant in the interview? Well, you go in with curiosity and then you also decide that you're there to listen, learn, and offer help. So, a question being asked of you is your opportunity to offer a solution, to share within the framework of your relevant experience, skills, strengths. When you think of it like this, you're going to be so much more relaxed. Like a question isn't an interrogation. It's not you having to convince anyone of something. It's not you having to prove yourself. A question is just an opportunity for you to share what you bring to the table, what you've done. And you can actually think of a job description as a list of pain points that need to be solved or aspirations and goals that are trying to be achieved. And when you look at it that way and you're thinking, oh, I can do that, I can do that, I can help that with that, then these questions really just become ways for them to explore how you can help them get what they need. Because ultimately, everyone's after the same thing. The role exists to make somebody's life easier and better. Maybe it's the team, maybe it's a hiring manager, maybe it's helping execute the mission in an easier and better way. That's how you want to think about this conversation. These are pain points to solve, these are goals to be achieved, and you thinking, I can do that as you enter the interview is going to be very, very empowering. Consultants don't have to prove themselves. They were brought in for a reason. When you go in thinking, I have to prove myself in an interview, you slip into convincing energy. You might even come off a little bit desperate. And think about this. Think about the last time someone tried to convince you of something. How did it feel? It feels a little ooh, cloying, right? It feels like a little bit of a push. Well, you do not want to have convincing energy in an interview. You want to have that sense of, I don't have anything to prove. I was invited for a reason. Convincing energy, what that does is it becomes a distraction for people. They don't know really what it is, but it just didn't feel good. So you don't want to be pushing people away with convincing energy. You want to decide you have nothing to prove because that's very grounding. That's what gives you that sense of ease and certainty in the conversation. So you've got to decide before every single interview conversation that you are enough, that everything you bring to the role is exactly what they need right at this moment. Here's a little quote for you. The number one key to success in life, this is from Tony Robbins. I'm a big fan. The number one key to success in life is to master your own state. If you can manage and master the states, there's nothing you can't do. This is where you take what you're thinking about yourself into another level. This is why it's so important to be intentional, not just about your preparation and research about the company and who you're talking with. I think those are really nice things to have as you go into an interview. But more importantly, write something out right before the interview that just makes you feel amazing. What you're doing is you are sending those chemicals to your brain for higher levels of critical thinking right before you go into an interview. What does this do for you? Well, it helps you think on your feet. So if you have done all this preparation, all this research, reacquainting yourself with skills and experience that you have, if you're not in a higher state of critical thinking, then the interview might feel a little bit clunky. It might feel like, wow, I'm just not sure. How can I say this? The flow won't be as easy as it is if you are in that higher state of critical thinking. So I highly recommend writing out an accomplishment right before. Like I said, I just want you to feel amazing, because that's and celebrate it. Like, kick it up another notch. Celebrate the accomplishment. Don't just feel good. Just give yourself the recognition for what you accomplished, to helping you feel like, yes, that was me. That felt so good. Going into an interview in that state will help everything else about the interview flow perfectly. Go out there believing that you have everything you need, everything it takes to land a job you love so that you can love your work life. All right, we'll talk again soon. If you like listening to this podcast, I invite you to visit the Love Your Work Life website at elissashuck-careercoach.com. On the site, you're going to find free resources and information about all of my coaching programs, everything you need to land a great job, advance your career, and lead and build an awesome team. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and don't forget to follow me on LinkedIn.